I'm Kristen Scott, founder of swirltosip.com, and today I'm here to talk to you about how to read California wine labels. Lots of information on a wine label. Some of it's required, some of it's optional. I figured the easiest way would be just to show you a few examples and go from there. So the first one I'm going to show you here is from Wiens, and this basically is Wiens Family Cellars with their logo at the top, Temecula Valley, Barbera, 2017. So let's break that down. Wiens is the company or the winery or the brand that made this wine. So the first thing you're typically going to see, usually the largest, is going to be the winemaker. Here you can see some other wineries. So sometimes you will notice that a winery will have one type of logo on one type of bottle and a different logo or a different color or a different label or an image on certain bottles and not on others. And that's just to differentiate the different other characteristics of wines. Sometimes you may notice that a larger company owns multiple wine brands, and sometimes you can tell that by turning to the back and looking at who produced and bottled the wine might be different than the winery information on the front. Once you've checked out the winery or the brand or the producer, the next thing we have on here is Temecula Valley. So Temecula Valley, that tells us the appellation or source of the grapes. So this one is sort of a general location. Temecula Valley doesn't tell us what winery or what vineyard specifically. It just tells us a general, what's called an AVA, American Viticultural Association label that's created by the Alcohol and Tobacco Organization. I can't think of the name. You know what I mean. So AVAs are determined by the government. And so this one, Temecula Valley, if it's very general like this, needs to be at least 75% from that location. Sometimes you might see a wine that just says California, and that means it has to be 100% from California, but it could be from anywhere, and the grapes could come from multiple places within California. Same with this. These grapes might be grown at a couple of different vineyards, but all within Temecula Valley. Okay, we'll look at other examples that you might see in a moment. Barbera is actually the name of the grape. So if there is one grape identified on the label, that needs to make up 85% of the contents of that wine or more. Sometimes if it is 100%, they'll put that on the label, just so you know. But it has to be at least 85% Barbera. There could be 15% of other grapes blended in here, though. Sometimes a winery will just call something a red blend, or it'll give it a fanciful name, and they do not have to tell you which grapes are in any given blend. So sometimes, I always love it when they do, so I will often look on the back of the bottle of a blend in hopes that they've given me some detail as to which grapes are in that blend. It's kind of nice to know, but they don't have to. And then the last thing on here is 2017, and that, believe it or not, is optional. That is considered the vintage, meaning what year the grapes were harvested. So a 2017 could be released 2018, 19, it could be held and stored and aged before release. So it doesn't tell you anything about when it was made available. It tells you when the grapes were harvested or picked. And it is, if you don't see a year on a bottle, it's often because a winemaker has chosen grapes or juice from multiple vintages or years. Okay? And they don't have to tell you that, but commonly this is done with sparkling wines, where they purposely mix juice from year to year to maintain consistency in flavor. So that's relatively a simple label. You also on the back, like I said, you're always going to have your government warning. You're going to have who produced and bottled it. You might have a little bit more information from the winery. You'll also somewhere on the label see the alcohol by volume. So just know that they are allowed to have a range of correct values here. So it could range, this one says 13.8, and that can be off by as much as 1.5%. So keep in mind when you're looking at the alcohol by volume on a given wine that it's within a plus or minus 1 or 1.5 depending where it falls. So good to know, keep in mind. All right, let's move on to the next one. This next one is an Adelaida. That's the name of the winery. And let me see, you can see that. So 2016 Pinot Noir, Adelaida District. And then the fine print at the bottom there says, estate grown, bottled and produced by Adelaida Cellars, Adelaida District, Paso Robles, California. The Van Stwenick family proprietors. So a lot more detail on that label. So Adelaida is the winery, 2016 is the vintage, Pinot Noir is the grape, and Adelaida District is the AVA. So that is a little bit of a general. However, if you go down further, this estate grown is kind of a special label you might see, or special wording you might see on a label. Estate grown means that the grapes are grown, crushed, fermented, bottled, and aged on site at that winery. So in order for it to say estate grown, or estate wines, means all those things. This one just says estate grown. So it means it was grown on the estate owned by this winery with these people as proprietors. So this is giving you some very specific information about where these grapes were grown. Okay? Not required, they chose to do so. And typically you'll see that in a wine that is going to have a higher value, because typically that means there's less of it available and it costs more money to make. So again, on the back, there's a little bit of more information about the vineyard, which was planted in 1964 and is the oldest Pinot Noir vineyard in California's Central Coast. Alcohol 13.2% by volume. Now, these last two I'm going to show you are both from Lorenzi Estate. So let's just take a look at this one first. So they both have the same logo. Lorenzi Estate Vineyards and Winery. So that's who made the wine. Below that, this one says 2014 Zinfandel, Lopez Ranch, Old Vine, and then it actually even tells you D'Ambrosio Block. Then at the very bottom here it says Private Reserve. So let's break that down. So we've got 2014 year of harvest. This is a little bit of an older wine than the other ones we've looked at, which might mean it has aged longer. It certainly means that. It may or may not be more valuable in that case. Zinfandel is the grape, so it must be at least 85% Zinfandel. Now it's telling us Lopez Ranch, Old Vine, D'Ambrosio Block, very specifically telling us where this wine was grown. And the information on the back goes into greater detail about 2014 collection celebrates the expression of the single vineyard. So again, a single vineyard wine simply means all of the grapes were grown in one particular vineyard. Going to be less of it has been made, typically going to be less available, and come with a higher price tag. This one is 14.7% alcohol. So if you keep in mind that there is a range allowed there, this could be a very high alcohol content wine. Good to know and be aware of. Private Reserve down here at the bottom. You might see that on a wine at any price point. That wording is not, there are no rules about that wording. So Private Reserve can be put on any wine. It doesn't matter whether it was estate or anything like that, or aged in a special way. So that's completely up to the winemaker. So it really, bottom line is, it doesn't mean anything. It means it's maybe a nicer wine compared to the other wines that winemaker produces. They could call all of their wines Private Reserve. So Private Reserve in and of itself sounds fancy, might drive the price up. It's not regulated. It could mean anything. So this one you'll notice, also Lorenzi, 2014 Petite Syrah, also says Private Reserve, and this one says Estate Grown down here in this little special line. So 2014 Petite Syrah, same year, 2014, different grape. We are not given information on the front about the AVA because it says Estate Grown. So we know that the grapes were grown on the Lorenzi vineyard estates. So they own the vineyards where these grapes were grown. So that's how they've chosen to tell us where the grapes were grown, just by simply labeling estate grown without adding the name of a vineyard. Private reserve again. This winery likes to slur that on there. It's not regulated. These wines are fantastic, but again, private reserve in and of itself has no particular meaning. And this one is 14.92 as compared to this one was 14.7. These are both big boys, high alcohol content. And because, again, that range is allowed, keep in mind it might actually be closer to 16%. So that would be pretty high for a wine. So lots of information is available, and these just are some of the quick overview of some of the rules that apply to California wines only. It'll be different in different states. It'll be different in different countries. And even within California, there are certain regions that have specific rules regarding things on labels. If you want to put something about a given AVA, that AVA might have their own rules. So kind of a general overview of what to look for in a wine label. Hope that gets you started when you are shopping for your wines as to what you're looking at. So, of course, the next step is to pick one, open it up, and enjoy. Cheers.